What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Funko 411. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a follow-up on the stuff that we discussed in my prior video. If you didn't watch that video already, you will definitely want to watch that before you watch this one, because I'm not going to kind of rehash a lot of the stuff that we already talked about. So I will have that video linked down in the description. Also, Pop and Duo and the Gasselcast discuss the same topic, so I will have their videos linked in the description as well. Kind of adds a lot of context to the overall story that's going on. But what I wanted to do today was talk about some new things that have come up in the days since that first video was posted. And this is kind of just going to add some more flavor to the story, give you some new details, and then also kind of support the original thesis of what's going on here. So the first thing that happened that I want to touch on, and like I said, I don't want to kind of rehash too much what we talked about in the first video, but what you'll remember from the first video is I discussed a seller on eBay named Amma77777, who was in China and was selling a lot of product, basically a lot of high-end Funko Pops, and kind of just had a very regular frequency of selling these Pops for like the last year plus. And then I made the connection that a lot of these Pops from this seller on eBay also just happened to be showing up with regular frequency in Funky Bop mystery boxes. And really this connection was made when I saw Vince and Bree from the Pop and Duo open up a mystery box that happened to have two of the Pops that I knew the seller in China was selling. But like I said, go check out their prior video. We talk a lot more about that. And now in the days since I posted the video, somebody brought it to my attention that this seller on eBay has actually kind of basically closed up shop. All of their listings have been taken down, and really the only thing that's left is like a shell of their profile. So I'm telling you this because it's just more information that kind of adds to the big picture of this whole story. It's another coincidence that we need to kind of factor in and say, that's a little bit strange. Why would the seller kind of shut down their shop? But in addition to that, someone also brought to my attention that if you go to the feedback of this eBay seller, that you can actually kind of scroll through and still see all the items that the person sold. And when I started doing that, what I noticed was there were actually a lot of Pops that I didn't originally call out in my first video that also happened to be frequently sold by this seller that were showing up in several Funky Bop mystery boxes. So I'll have some new screenshots up now. In red, I'm going to leave the one circled that we talked about in the last video. And then in purple, I'm going to kind of put some of these new ones out there that you'll see I identified from kind of scrolling through the feedback. And what's interesting with the ones I found in the feedback is a lot of these, there are some big hits. Like there's the Parks and Rec, the Andy Karate, there's the Snake Plissken, there's the T-Bone that's super limited. You know, there are some big grails, but there also are a lot of kind of more common Pops. And when you think about it, Funko, you know, has made thousands and thousands of Pops. So when you start seeing these common ones that are sold by this eBay seller also showing up pretty regularly in Funky Bop mystery boxes, it's just another strange coincidence, I think. And, you know, I'm using that word coincidence because I want to be fair. There's still a chance that this is a coincidence. But like I said, when you kind of start taking all of these things at a whole, it starts looking like there's more to it. And I also want to point out something that I didn't spend a lot of time talking about in the prior video, which is that this seller was also selling sealed Fun Day boxes. So in addition to selling all of these individual Pops from Fun Days, they were also selling them sealed in the shoe boxes. So I want to point that out because just because something is sealed doesn't mean that the product is authentic. You know, that's just kind of common sense. But I'm going to let that image speak for itself. But I just want to point out that I have never seen a Fun Days box that has that sticker on the inside of the back of the box. In fact, I have one right here, which is my own box that I got from the 2021 Fun Days. And I had kept one that was sealed. And this is the box, and it is still sealed, and you'll notice there is no sticker right there. In fact, the only sticker that's on it is right down here in this corner, which seems to be missing from the boxes that I saw from that eBay seller and somebody else's boxes too. But let's move on, because what I want to talk about next is actually the main reason why I wanted to do this follow-up video. So after I posted that first video, a lot of people started commenting and kind of sharing their experiences with buying Funko Pop mystery boxes. And I did have several people who came out and said that they had pulled certain top hits from those boxes that were on the list of pops that I was kind of questioning could potentially be fake. And so the big question on those people's minds were, do I have something that's real, or is this thing fake? And one person who reached out actually told me that they had bought a $400 mystery box from Funko Pop, and they pulled a Jolly Roger 1000 piece that was from 2017 SDCC. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have images right over here that show you the pictures of that pop that he pulled from the Funko Pop mystery box. And then over here, I'm going to have some images of authentic pops so that we could sort of do a comparison and decide whether or not the one that was received from Funko Pop is real or fake. So the thing I want to start out with first is the bottom of the box. At the bottom of the box, you'll see that there is a production sticker that says FAC dash and then some numbers. And what you're going to notice right off the bat is that there are some subtle differences in the font style. So if you look at the one on the left, it's a little bit more bold and the dashes are a little bit narrower. And if you look at all the versions on the right, the font is a little bit thinner and the dashes are much wider. In fact, if you look at the dash next to that first C after FAC, you'll see that that dash kind of leans into the C a lot further than the dash does on the pop on the left side. So that's one bit of evidence right there that already kind of flagged this for me, that something does not appear right with this pop. Even sort of like the spacing of that sticker just seems a little bit off, but really you can immediately tell that the font is just different. All right, so let's move our attention to the front of the box, because when we're talking about the potential of a fake Funko Pop, one of the first things you want to look at are stickers. So with this pop, we've got a 1000 piece con sticker, and con stickers are extremely frequently faked, and usually they have some obvious tells. So with this pop, I do want to point out again that this is a 1000 piece pop and there was not a shared sticker. So there's no reason why somebody would have done a sticker swap or done anything like that. So if this were authentic, there should be no reason why anybody switched the sticker and put on a fake one. All right, so let's highlight some things that I noticed about this sticker compared to the ones that I know to be real. So the first thing that you're going to see that I want to point out is if you look at the eye on the sticker, the Comic-Con eye, there's some shading behind the eye that is very, very faint on this version of the pop. If you look at some of the other ones that I'll have kind of scrolling through on the screen, you'll see that there's like more of like a gradient. You'll see that it's a little bit darker. You can kind of see the grains behind the eye. That is a very obvious tell when somebody is kind of doing their own printing of the sticker. The second thing that I noticed is if you look up in the right corner where it says Funko, there's a crown. And on the version that the person got from Funko Pop, the crown is actually sitting about like, a few millimeters above the O, but it's enough where you can see a visible gap between the O and where the crown starts. Now, if you look at all these other ones that I found, none of them have that gap above the O. All of them, the crown is connected. And in fact, if you look at other versions of the sticker from that same year, try to get it to focus there, you'll see right there that the crown is attached on that one. I've got another pop here from the same year. You'll see the crown is attached on that one and also on that one. And we've got a few more. We got one here. The crown is also attached on that one. So you get the idea. I have a couple more examples, but in all instances of pops made from this year, the crown is attached to the O. So looking at that sticker, it is pretty obvious to me that this is a unique variation compared to other versions of pops that came out in 2017 with the con sticker. Another thing I wanted to point out is the color difference in the stickers themselves. So this is actually fairly obvious if you look at it. The coloring on the one on the left, the yellow is very, very overblown and bright, whereas on the ones that I know are legitimate, the coloring of the yellow is much more subtle. It's more like a highlighter color yellow, not so blown out and bright. And I know some people might say, well, this is just, a possible production difference or a printing difference, but it is worth highlighting because you could kind of see the coloring of this one just seems a little bit off compared to that one. But the next thing that I want to talk about is actually, to me, the biggest tell, and it's the one thing that I can't really dispute that there is a clear difference between these two stickers, and that's actually at the bottom of the sticker. You'll see that it says Comic-Con, and the Comic-Con logo are registered trademarks of San Diego Comic Convention. Now, if you look closely, and I'm going to have both image up, you're going to see that on the image on the left, the one that's the pop from Funky Bop, the letter C in particular is the most noticeable. But overall, this font is slightly different. But the letter C in particular actually hooks around almost all the way, kind of almost like the shape of an O, but it's way more rounded. Whereas if you look at the ones on the right side of your screen, all of those are shaped more like a crescent. The C kind of just has more of a crescent shape, where you can just tell that the font is a very close match, but clearly different on the ones that are legitimate versions of the pop. And I'll quickly point it out on one of the other stickers from a different pop from that convention. If you look at the sticker, this one has the exact same font style as the ones that I did my research on, and it again clearly differs from the one that the person received from Funky Pop. So listen, I do not claim to be an expert on identifying fake Funko Pops, but I did spend hours researching this pop and looking for these differences, and I shared them with people who I do believe to be experts. And the consensus from all of those people were that this was a fake product. Now, does that mean that every pop that Funky Bop has ever sold is fake? No, of course not. But with respect to this pop that I have researched and that others have looked at with me, the general consensus is that this is not authentic. So where does this leave us? As far as this person goes who bought this pop, this was from a $400 mystery box. I told this person that they needed to reach out to Funky Bop, provide these screenshots, kind of proving that this product is not authentic, and ask for a refund, because that's a lot of money. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people out there who have bought expensive boxes who pulled some of these big hits. And if you are one of those people, I would be doing your research right now to try to authenticate these pops. And if you can't authenticate them, you probably need to reach out to Funky Bop and try to get him to do the right thing. But that's all I got for you guys today. With peace and love, this is probably the last time I'm going to talk about this, because I really feel like I kind of gave you as much evidence as I possibly could for you to make your own decision about this. But that's all I've got. I will see you on the next one.